Welcome ladies and gents, we had the Qatar Grand Prix. Now we'll go through and rate each and every one of the drivers, how they got on over the weekend, and we're going to start right at the front. Number one, Max Verstappen. He got the most perfect start, didn't he? Exactly what he needed, clean off the line, made the inside line and ran Russell wide. We know that's the tactic he likes to use. That sort of dropped Russell back behind Lando Norris, didn't he? And then I thought that might not have been the right thing to do for Verstappen. I think he probably wanted the Mercedes behind him because that looked a bit slower than the McLaren when it comes to race pace. But Norris, he kept him back just out of the DRS zone, 1.5, 1.8 seconds, around that figure. The one thing he did brilliantly well was manage the 3 safety car restarts, didn't he? He got cut out a little bit. I think that was more down to the safety car lights not working. And that caught him out, and that was the one big chance Lando Norris had. I think had Norris got past Verstappen, I think there was a chance that Norris would have won that, but Verstappen did brilliantly well, held the tyres well, and he said all season long, hasn't he, it's crucial to get up in front, and then from there on control the race from there. He did that brilliantly well. Shows why the 4 times world champion. His qualifying lap was absolutely phenomenal, came out of the blue, didn't it? Even he was shocked at that. It took a couple by surprise. For all the world, it looked like George Russell should be on pole. I mean, he de facto got that in the end. Max Verstappen was massively angry at that, wasn't he, with George Russell's antics. He's absolutely berated him in the media for just being sort of two-faced effectively. And that's his view. But yeah, Max drove a brilliant race, a proper world champion's drive again, to extend his lead in the Constructors' Championship for a car that's, you know, been absolutely nowhere for much of the season. He's pulled off 2 brilliant wins where it was, you know, Lando Norris is to prove that he's, you know, won there fighting for the championship. He's pulled off some brilliant races recently. I've given him a 10 out of 10. Well, sprint race wasn't great at all. I give him a 4 out of 10, but sticking with a 10 because his racecraft was absolutely fantastic. Second place, Charles Leclerc, and he did brilliantly well. Started in 5th place, made his way up into P2, and he got that crucial move on Oscar Piastri on the restart, didn't he? And that's what set him up. I mean, it looked like for all the world he'd just finished on the podium in 3rd place. The Lando Norris penalty really helped him out and gifted him that 2nd place, but much needed for Ferrari, wasn't it? He'd said he'd snap your hands off if you've offered him 2nd place at the start of the weekend, and absolutely maximised everything he could, kept Ferrari in the hunt for the, you know, for the title, for the constructors title. For all the world, if it finished where it did, it was McLaren's all but, you know, sealed and delivered. Just a couple of points they would have needed in Abu Dhabi now, but there's not much in it now, is there? 21 points, there's 2 points if Ferrari take a 1-2 and a fastest lap from McLaren finish 4th and 5th, it's Ferrari's title. So I mean, I wouldn't write that off completely either, because it's Ferrari's track, the way that it's set up. It's a bit like Vegas with the long straights into the braking. There's not the long fast medium corners, what we see here in Qatar, which should have really suited McLaren. They dominated sprint, and it was a bit surprising where their pace went, but back for Ferrari, Charles Leclerc with a brilliant job. Now, you know, only 8 points behind Lando Norris after that, so really puts himself in potential to take 2nd place in the championship, which, if he pulls that off, will be absolutely brilliant from him. I've given him a 9 out of 10 for that. He's got a 7 out of 10 for the sprint race also. 3rd place, Oscar Piastri, and the winner of the sprint race. In the race, though, he was a bit redundant, wasn't he? He made a couple of mistakes, kept running wide, a couple of snap oversteer moments. His car really wasn't quite well balanced, as we've seen Lando Norris's. At one point he dropped off quite a bit, off 9 seconds to Lando Norris at one point. Obviously the safety cars helped him bunch that gap up for him a bit, but yeah, the restart, he got passed by Charles Leclerc, and it's such a big difference of what a day made, wasn't it? They absolutely controlled the sprint race with a 1-2, and in the qualifying, their pace later on in the evening, just that same day, just disappeared, didn't they? They didn't look like they were the ones fighting for pole position, where all the world this track should have really suited them. It was brilliant for them last year. In the race this year, again, I think this is one that they'll feel that kind of just didn't maximise what they kind of had underneath them. Oscar Piastri comes home in 3rd place. I suppose, yeah, he'll be just disappointed. He should have really beaten Charles Leclerc in the end. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. Fourth place finisher George Russell, and well, he got the pole position in the end, didn't he, with the penalty going for Max Verstappen on that one place grid penalty he got, which was strange, both on outlaps. I've never really seen that before. Not getting any Christmas cards from Max Verstappen, is he, after that? But a poor start. It was the second phase of that start, really, where Max Verstappen really got up alongside him, and the crucial pass into turn one. He ran him wide. He probably could have expected that, but I'm not sure what much more George Russell could have done. He was there. He could have lifted and followed behind, but then I'm sure Norris would have been the inside, so he was kind of a little bit stuck of where pole position was for him. It should be on the other side of the grid. It might be something that they might consider for next year, because it gives you the inside line into the corner. But yeah, disappointing from there. And then he was just not really pushing or doing anything fantastic. He got the sticky wheel nut, didn't he, or the slow rear right tyre getting stuck on the car on the pit stop, which cost him 7 seconds. And it was a strange early. He pitted far earlier than everybody else, didn't he, for the first stops. The safety cars kind of like helped him out a little bit on that, because he came out and he was stuck behind Fernando Alonso, just couldn't make his way past, which was really strange, because Fernando Alonso was screaming down the radio of how slow that car was down the straight. I mean, on one lap he lost 2-3 places, Fernando Alonso. So unless there was just some sort of battery recharge issue for Alonso on them laps, and they managed to fix, but it did work, because George Russell on newer hard tyres than Fernando Alonso just couldn't get close at all to make the pass. He then got the pits and went on for the second hard, and he was screwing about that, wasn't he? And rightly so, because he should have been the one on the mediums and then could have made up some places. He also got a 5-second penalty as well, didn't he? George Russell, for safety car infringement, and then a P4 in the end. Bit of a shame that early pit stop cost him, and also the sticky wheel coming off, that also cost him. But again, just kept fourth place with that 5-second penalty. Built enough a gap behind Pierre Gasly behind him. But I'm giving him a 6 out of 10, because he'd be disappointed. He'd gone from first to fourth, so not a great race at all. But this McLaren is seeming to find some pace in certain conditions, isn't it? So interesting to see if this Mercedes can keep that going into next season, into the next race in Abu Dhabi, and even into next season, which will be crucial for them and him. Next up, Pierre Gasly with a 5th place finish. He started in P11, and well, he benefited massively from the safety car, didn't he? Got him up into P6. He got P5 as a result of the Lando Norris penalty. Crucial 10 points, which moves Alpine up into P6 by 5 points ahead of Haas in the Constructors' title. And Pierre Gasly's been on a bit of a roll, hasn't he? He was picking up some good points, followed home big points in Brazil, and then again here today was crucial for Alpine. It did a real solid job, held off P6 behind him quite easily in the end. And I know there was some pressure from Carlos Sainz on that, but Pierre did a really solid job for the team. I'm giving him a 10 out of 10 for the race. 6th place, Carlos Sainz, and he started in 7th, finished in 6th. Was up to 6th and then was just stuck behind Charles Leclerc, really, wasn't he? In a bit of no man's land. He got the puncher, and luckily enough for him, he didn't lose an awful lot of places like Lewis Hamilton, did he? He came out in P8 with that. Obviously then the safety car bunched them all up, so it didn't mean he lost a bunch of places or time in that sense, or race time really. And then just couldn't get Pierre Gasly, which was a bit surprising, because that Ferrari is generally quite fast down the straights. Alpine's one of their biggest weaknesses, and with the DRS also, I thought Carlos Sainz probably would have made the pass on Gasly, and it would have been massively helpful for them in the Constructors' Championship. They need all the points that they can. So a bit disappointing from there for Carlos Sainz, but for all the world he looked like he would have just followed Charles Leclerc home, but for that puncture, which he'll be really disappointed with. A really strange call not to get that picked up early on, and caused and both ruined his and Lewis Hamilton's race in the end, wasn't it? I've given him a 7 out of 10 for the sprint and quality of the race also. 7th place finish for Fernando Alonso. He had a brilliant qualifying session, got himself up to P8. Again, the change from the sprint to the qualifying rate and race was absolutely massive, wasn't it? They didn't like the sort of daytime running at all. The cooler temperatures really helped them on that car. But Fernando Alonso was absolutely brilliant. But early parts of the race, he was struggling, wasn't he? Slow on the safety car restart. He got passed by Lewis Hamilton. And then Yuki Tsunoda, Magnussen, Gasly was down to P12 at one point. The safety car really helped him out. The second safety car, a great call by him to pit for the second time and go on the mediums. Again, it was absolutely the right call because he was flying at the end. Got himself back up into P7. A fantastic points haul for him and Aston Martin. He's been the star of that car for an absolute ages, and he really putting the manners on Lance Stroll. There was a bit of a mid-season dip for him, but he's come on strong, and the Fernando Alonso we know of old, he's been brilliant in this race, and they'll be hoping to sign off the season on a bit of a high in Abu Dhabi next time. They're in no man's land in the constructors, isn't it? Comfortably in the position they're going to finish, and nothing really but just to build on some decent finishes for them now, isn't it, up until the end of the season. I've given him an 8 out of 10 and a 7 out of 10 for the sprint, because his sprint wasn't too bad as well. 8th place man, Zhou Guanyu, the man that finally takes home some points. Absolutely brilliant. This car was fantastic, wasn't it? Just came alive again. Qualified himself really in the position where he could pick up some points in P12. He had a really bad start though, didn't he? Lost down 3 places, put him back to P12. He was back up to P9 in the safety car, and then got himself up into P8 with the Norris penalty, and managed to hold on to that, didn't he? He was comfortable in the end in that P8. I thought he might come under thumb pressure from Kevin Magnussen behind, but he managed to build up a bit of a gap to him, thankfully, because if he didn't, Norris was probably there to snap on his heels and take that P8 from him. But overall, much deserved. Finally, Sauber going with that, getting some 2 points crucially. Would have been the first time in absolute age, 24 races, and they didn't pick up a point. Would have been an absolute disaster and really embarrassing for them. But Joe, well deserved. He's finally picked up some points this season. He's had some really decent results, hasn't he, at certain points in the season. Not on the grid for next season, but results and races like this will really put him in the limelight, especially when it comes, like, everybody sort of just remembers the last races, doesn't he? So if he can pull that off with another decent result in Abu Dhabi, he'll be massively pleased with that. But it was all about the upgrades have kind of come on this car far too late really for Joe and Bottas to really show what they can do, because it's been really hard to judge their performances considering how bad that car was before these upgrades turned up. But yeah, finally 2 massive points, and it wasn't just a P10, a really solid decent P8 for him as well. I've given him a 10 out of 10 because you just can't give anything but when he picks up points in that car. 9th place finish for Kevin Magnussen, started in 10th, and overall you think this is a decent finish for him, isn't it? But I think he'd be a little bit disappointed in the end. He was comfortable up into P8 after a really good start, and then he was 12 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, who was ahead of him at that point on lap 26. He was keeping Pierre Gasly behind him comfortably, and from there on they just didn't react, or something happened within the safety car. I kind of missed that part of Kevin Magnussen's race, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. But then that really cost him, put him on the back foot. He dropped down a little bit, but brings home, he got passed by Zhou and Alonso in the end. I think he was another one that probably should have gone on the mediums to try and give themselves that big boost towards the end of the race. It didn't really happen for him, didn't he? But decent result in the end. 2 crucial points for Haas. I mean, if they didn't do that, it would have been an even bigger gap to Alpine, and a big haul of points needed for them to turn around and try and regain that P6 in Abu Dhabi, which I think they really do well deserve. They've held on to that place just about all season, and for it to be taken away with what are the bit of a lucky result for Alpine in Brazil, that's putting them in position. But then Alpine have done the job in this race, especially. But it's a 5-point lead that they hold over Alpine, and if both Haas finish in the points, there's a chance that they can overhaul them, and there's every possibility they can do that next time out in Abu Dhabi. But a decent points haul in the end. I've given him an 8 out of 10 because he had a decent qualifying and races. 10th place finish for Lando Norris. He started in 3rd place and into the second corner he should have really been in 1st place. He had his nose ahead of Max Verstappen, and I'm surprised he didn't go for the move like we've seen Charles Leclerc do on Lewis Hamilton around the outside? Was he thinking back to Mexico vibes where he didn't want to get run off? His battle really wasn't with Max Verstappen, it was to beat the two Ferraris. But these are the kind of things that Max Verstappen does that put doubts in your head, doesn't he, when you go up against him? And that kind of really worked in Max's favour this time around, because Norris really should have gone for that move around the outside like we did with seeing with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in the sprint race. Lando Norris backed out, and I think that I was quite disappointed that he did that actually. From there onwards he was pretty solid in his race, wasn't he? But then that 10-second stop-go penalty, which seems massively harsh for not lifting down on the double wave yellows. Once that got referred to the stewards, it was the only penalty the stewards could do when you look at the rule books. Should they then consider the circumstances and the seriousness of not slowing in double yellows? I think it opens up a can of worms that the FIA and the stewards don't really want to get into. It's a double wave yellow. It's massively important you slow down. Max Verstappen, crucially, was ahead of him, managed to do that. And a little lift from Lando Norris would have shown he did that. He said in his interview after the race, wasn't he? He's not blind and he's not stupid, or he's clearly missed it, hasn't he? So it's just something that just a mistake in the end. Disappointing, but he was absolutely phenomenal in the end, wasn't he? He was 15 seconds behind P14. He was the last runner, and to come home and take P10 off Valtteri Bottas was really harsh on Bottas, but Lando Norris did a decent recovery drive to pick up some crucial points. He got the fastest lap and the P10, so 2 points for McLaren. So crucial, that could prove crucial when we go to Abu Dhabi next time out. I've given him a 7 out of 10. I give him a 10 out of 10 for the race. So overall, a pretty solid weekend from Norris. Disappointing in the end, I think, with that penalty, but there's not an awful lot you can do, because that was effectively just the timing of the penalty was really so bad, because it was just after the safety car restart. Meant he was effectively last, and with little laps for him to recover, it was just far too much for him to do to get anywhere decent in the end. But there we go. 11th place man, Valtteri Bottas, and nearly double points for the Sauber team in the end. They'd be really disappointed. Had a decent start, stayed out of trouble in the early doors, didn't he? And then on the second restart, it was Liam Lawson that nearly took him out, didn't he? He did well to avoid that. Experience played his part there. He ran wide, cost him a couple of places, but then he managed to get himself up into P10 with a nice pass on Alex Albon, didn't he, with the DRS. And it was just a shame that it was Lando Norris that was on a charge coming up through the field behind him, because had it been anyone else, I think he might have just held on for some points. But he'll be kicking himself, moved himself off last, because that was the best result from a Sauber. He's ahead of Logan Sargent, despite both being in 0 points, but he's obviously picks up that place because of better race results. But yeah, he'll just be disappointed he couldn't bring home another point. Well deserved for Sauber, but Valtteri, could he end the season with no points? First time in his career he could be doing that. He's got one more race to try and do that. And who knows, will they be in the fight for P10? I mean, we've had a crazy race here, isn't it? And could we get more DNFs, or as many DNFs as we've seen here in the next race? Who knows? It's hard to rate Valtteri Bottas, isn't it? Because his teammates picked up P8, he's just missed out on points. But I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10, because to finish just there, it was, with this car, what we've seen from it all season is a pretty solid result from him. 12th place finish from Lewis Hamilton, and he's had another stinker of a race, didn't he? Another one where he just wanted to probably throw that Mercedes into the bin and just walk away from the end of the season. He said he'll pick himself up and fight again, because that's what he'll be known as. This sort of poor season is not what he's going to be known at by Mercedes or any fans really, because he's had some brilliant years at Mercedes. It goes into his last race, but he probably didn't want it to finish like this. He got that sort of false start, which I think seen people compare it to what we've seen Lando Norris do, and he didn't get a penalty. The difference was that Lando Norris actually managed to stop his car and then go before the lights went out. Lewis Hamilton didn't quite do that, jutted away. It was a poor start, lost 3 places on the back of it, just to put salt in the wounds. He got a 5-place penalty on that, and then was behind Sergio Perez, wasn't he? Couldn't make the move on him, and then he got the puncture, put him down all the way down to P16. At that point he just wanted to throw in the towel. He was comfortably last, but then on the got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, just to top things off. Or was a drive-through, for Lewis Hamilton for speeding in the pit lane, which was another kick in the teeth. It's a surprisingly harsher penalty, because normally it's always just a 5-second penalty. So he must have been exceeding that speed limit by at least 6 or 12 kph. I've seen what Bernie Collins has said. So it didn't quite look like it was serious by that much of a distance. So I'm surprised they've gone for the harsher penalty. I think all penalties that we've seen this weekend were kind of on the harsher side, and is that the result of the so much chopping and changing that we're seeing within the FIA, with the race director and the senior stewards and the like that's going on there? Bit of chaos, and it's kind of, as it filtered down into what we've seen with the penalties and the race, because it's clearly not inconsistent with, or consistent with what we've seen before in other races and other penalties, and that just adds to the whole the FIA is for and against this or that person. I think they're just in a bit of a shambles anyway, the FIA, and they've got a lot of learning to do from here. But for Lewis Hamilton, disappointing, a horrible weekend. Wanted to pit and throw it away in the end, but to come from effectively last and still pick up P12, I could say it's a decent recovery, but it's a weekend he'll absolutely want to forget. I'm giving him a 3 out of 10 for this weekend. 13th place man, Yuki Tsunoda, and he had a interesting race. Got himself up into P10, didn't he? And then from between lap 13 and 15, he lost a place every single lap. I don't know if it's just that Racing Bull was so hard on its medium tyres, which was unusual, or you must have just got some graining, I think, because the cars were around him and the guys at the front seemed to go an awful long distance on the mediums. They just seemed to get faster and faster and really bringing that thread down to the carcass, and it was strange because the longer they went on them tyres, the faster they got, like Christian Horner was saying. But it was the opposite for the Racing Bulls, and Yuki Tsunoda had graining. And then at the end, on the third safety car, he went for the softs. It looked like that would be the right call. I think there was just too many laps to go at the end, wasn't there? 16 and 17, and then within 8 or 9 laps he chewed them softs up and he fell way back down in the end. Disappointing result from him in the end. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. 14th place finish for Liam Lawson, and he had a scruffy race, didn't he? Nearly took out Valtteri Bottas at one point on the start. Pitted for the softs like his teammate again. That just wasn't the call. It was a scruffy race from Liam Lawson, and in this race he just kind of really struggled with that, didn't he? I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. He's not had the performances to say look, I am the man to take Yuki Tsunoda's seat. Might he still get that? Who knows? But difficult weekend again for him. A 4 out of 10. And 15th place, Alex Albon, and he had an eventful race, didn't he? He was got hit by Lance Stroll on lap 1, down to P16, lost a place off the line anyway, didn't he? And then went for the softs, which looked like was the right call for him. He was up to P8 at one point, but then they went off. He got the 10-second penalty as well. Finished last in the end. The gamble didn't really pay off, and for him and where he was in the race, it was probably the right choice to make. Shame that the softs just didn't hang on as long as they did. It's been a tricky weekend for the Williams, haven't they? Colapinto out with another incident, and Williams and Albon, they probably should have gone for the mediums and potentially a point on there for them, but it was going to be a tough race from where he qualified in 16th place, but I'm giving him a 3 out of 10. On to the DNFs then. We've got the DNF of Ocon and Colapinto, both taken out on the first lap by Nico Hülkenberg. No rating for the pair of them. A difficult weekend for both. Ocon is out of the Alpine, isn't he? That's the last race for him. He didn't even get to finish it, which is a bit of a shame. He's been allowed to leave early to test for Haas at the end of season test, and it kind of works for both teams, isn't it? I'll watch the whole video on this come shortly about Jack Doohan is going to take his place, son of Mick Doohan in fact, will take his place for the last race in Abu Dhabi. It was a DNF for Nico Hülkenberg in the end. He spun on his own on lap 39, and Sergio Perez as well, didn't he? Was actually up into P5, had a decent race. The safety car fell for him perfectly, and he got obviously the punctures for Carlos Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton ahead of him really helped. But then he just looked like he lost it in the end. It's a shame. He was P5, went for a semi-decent result, but another DNF for him. And then we also got the DNF for Lance Stroll, who did only up to lap 8, didn't he? Hit Alex Albon and then pit and DNF a lap later to serve the penalty for hitting Albon. yeah, a disappointing race from him. No rating. But yeah, that rounds off that. Predictions review, another stinker from me, isn't it? You want to be getting me to pick your lottery numbers anytime soon. But for the sprint race, I had Charles Leclerc to be on pole, or to win, Norris second and Hamilton third. It was a McLaren 1-2, Piastri with the win, Norris second and Russell in third, which is strong showing from the Mercedes. For qualifying, I had Norris to take pole, Sainz second and Piastri third, all wrong on that, with Verstappen, Russell and Lando, Norris. And for the race, I thought it'd be a Norris win, followed by Sainz and Leclerc, but it was Verstappen, Leclerc and Piastri. I thought it'd be a good weekend for McLaren. It wasn't really in the end. They've lost ground to Ferrari, and I thought it'd be a bad weekend for Alpine, and that 5th place for Pierre Gasly had been brilliant. Shot them out, a 1 out of 11 results right for this weekend. So yeah, like I said, don't be taking any, or getting me to pick any lottery numbers for you anytime soon. It was a decent race in the end at Qatar. We head now to the last race of the season, Abu Dhabi. Watch out for the preview coming shortly on that. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time.